The last video I did was updates and explanations of Aurora, Colorado, explaining why I don't believe patriots and militia should get involved. And it's still, going by what I'm getting on social media, what I'm getting in comments, a lot of people agree. The whole thing still stinks of a setup. And since it's in a socialist held area, it's happening to them. Just let it happen. You know, when it spreads out from those areas out into our locations, that's when we should get involved. Because remember, as long as this stuff keeps happening inside their controlled areas, in the long run it makes them weaker. And it makes us stronger without any effort. Because they lose infrastructure, they lose support. That works out for us in the long run. And, you know, puts us in a better position down the road. Granted, those people will be pissed off at us, but let's be serious, they don't exactly like us now anyways. But over this last week here, I will let you know that I have not posted videos because my back flared up, the spinal injury from last year. Nothing serious. It's just rest, get it to loosen up and all that stuff. Make sure the vertebrae are popped back into place. Nothing real serious. But while I was dealing with that over this last week, I have done quite a bit of thinking, because one question that keeps getting asked is, well, when will militia get involved? When will conservatives get involved? When will patriots get involved? And then it's typically followed up with the insults of, you guys are just a bunch of cucks, a bunch of cowards, because you're not doing anything, you're not killing people, you're not raping, looting, and murdering. And let's be serious, that's what it is. That's what these people expect. Most of the people that make these comments, I get the feeling from them, you know, if they have a channel and they have any videos, these people are calling for anarchy. These are not patriots. These are people that want anarchy because they seem to believe that they're going to become the real life Negan in their area. For those of you that don't get the reference, Negan was the big bad guy that everybody liked in Walking Dead. He was the cool guy. He was the one that had the leather jacket, a baseball bat wrapped with barbed wire he called Lucille. And his word was law, and whatever he wanted, you could never go against it. You could never deny him anything. And a lot of these turds, I really believe that in their minds, that's what they picture themselves as. They want anarchy because they believe that they're going to be the strong guy. They're going to be the one in charge. They're going to be the Negan. What's the reality, though? What's the reality of if war does happen? If conflict does break out? Here's some pictures for you. This top picture here is the aftermath of a car bomb in Dublin in the 1960s. Women and children in the area didn't matter as long as they hit their target, whatever the target could be. Target could be a collaborating official, could be a British patrol, could be the opposite religious group. Didn't matter. And if people just happen to get injured, well, that's on them for being in the area, by Job. Down here, it's a picture of what a lot of us probably experienced during the war on terrorism, isn't it? The aftermath of a suicide bomber. Now you have an Iraqi army vehicle back here that was damaged. But this is the damage that you don't talk about. The damage you don't think about. The women and kids that were in the area at the time. Realize that what you guys want what you guys scream for, is this. It's not glory. It's not you being the personal Negan. It's not you being the new George Washington. You being the new Audie Murphy. You being the real life Chuck Norris on the battlefield. This is the reality. Your dead comrades you can deal with. Dead enemy, you all definitely can deal with that. But it's when it's women and kids that are in the area at the same time. You'll learn real quick that that's hard to deal with, and that's something that will haunt your nightmares for the rest of your life. And I've warned about this in the past. Hell, I did a video series on it called The Coming Civil War, one of the most popular videos I have on this channel. A few people have gone back, re-watched it, and said that I should somehow find a way to re-release it, to remind people again on what the horrors can be. Now, does that mean we're just going to sit back, allow everything to happen because we don't want to see this here? No. Because sooner or later, you can only push a person so much. And then they fight back. You can only whip a person so many times before he gets used to it. And when the whip comes down on him, he grabs it and yanks on it and pulls that overseer to him. And then takes his other hand, wraps it around that overseer's neck and starts to squeeze. So that brings us to the purpose of this video. Some ideas on when the militia and patriot movements could or should go to war. I have a little list here, not in the greatest of order, of some different scenarios on when it could happen. And you know what? I even have some modern day scenarios where we came damn close. Let's start out with the most obvious right off the bat. Police state martial law. Constitution has been suspended. People are locked down, not allowed to leave their homes. Travel is prohibited. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like maybe something I talked about 4 years ago? Especially after March 13th of 2020? I warned people then that we were in a situation where very, very easily the enemy could exploit it and start rounding us up. And if they started doing that, then everyone should ruck up, gear up, put a mag in their weapon, and do what needs to be done. But they didn't take that final step. They kept us there for a while. You know, they got real close. It looked like they were going to go harder, and then they'd back off and, you know, just back and forth. And over the past couple weeks here, it actually came out. A member of the World Economic Forum let it slip to the press that the whole lockdowns at that time, after March 13th of 2020, that whole thing was a giant war game to see how people would take the launching of the New World Order, the launching of a one world government, the complete restriction and abolition of every freedom that you have. Was that the actual purpose? I don't know, but hey, that would probably explain why they didn't go full retard back then. But ask yourself the question, if they do it again, and they do start pushing really hard, do you think maybe then might be that little thing that you keep screaming for? Maybe then might be that moment that you should throw on your gear, grab your weapon, and start fighting back? To me it is. We came damn close. I was constantly talking to people in my area about how much we would take before we would just do the things that we had been talking about, and I won't go any further. What we had been talking about amongst ourselves at that point. This next one should be pretty obvious also. Firearms confiscation. Now, we're not just talking, oh, they passed a law completely ignoring the Second Amendment. You know, they've now made assault weapons illegal. They've made all firearms illegal. We're talking actual confiscation. They've now gone past that, you know, quote-unquote government buyback period, even though none of us purchased our weapons from the government. Well, not unless you got it from CMP, Civilian Marksmanship Program. But we've gone past that point, past the point of the voluntary turn-ins. They know who has the firearms because of, oh my God, those ATF Form 4473s, which the Patriot movement has been talking about for decades. That those things were a backdoor gun registration because the forms could never be destroyed. Where you actually had whistleblowers from the ATF coming out and saying it is a registration. That they've created a massive database on gun owners. And even if you've sold that firearm, you're still considered a threat according to that database. So maybe we get to that situation. They're starting to launch raids. They're collecting up those big batches of firearms that they're worried about the most first, the ones that they're going to have on TV. You know, they'll go after Ted Nugent and his massive armory. They'll go after other people that have massive amounts of firearms. They'll go after those people who have the Class 1 machine gun licenses, who have paid for that tax stamp and they have full autos. Maybe when we start hearing that's going on, maybe at that point, that's when you should gear up and head out. Do what needs to be done. And obviously, you know, as soon as the law passes, while we're waiting for it to go through the courts, you know, for them to say, yep, you know what, we think this is legal. Pass me that money, please, there, Kamala. Maybe after it passes, it gets signed into law. That's that time when you should be going out at that point, tossing in even more caches and hidden logistics spots around your area, building those hide bunkers, saying fuck it, going around all over, cutting down the trees while someone's digging the holes in the ground for the bunker, filling, while one person's digging a hole, another person's filling sandbags. You get the hole dug, you get the logs put in the corners as the supports, you get the sandbags put in there to around the walls, you know, after you get the plastic up, and then you put logs over the top, you put sheet metal over the top, you put plastic over that, and then you start backfilling dirt over that. Because you know the time's counting down. You know, there's only that 2 weeks left, that 3 weeks left on that voluntary quote-unquote turn-in time. Don't waste the time during that. That's when you should be doing those final preparations. That we're going to war tomorrow preparations. You should be maximizing every minute of that time. And people should be recruiting to their groups at that time. People that you've known for a really long time. Sheeple who are having problems with this. Because, well, my dad has a firearm, but he's not a terrorist threat, and they're threatening to arrest him if he doesn't turn it in. you know, I don't know what to do. You know, I'm just not sure. This doesn't make sense. You know, that a free country doesn't do this. That sounds like someone maybe you should be talking to sway over to our side of the fence at that moment, isn't it? So that's another little situation that would call for militias and patriots across this country to start stacking bodies, isn't it? How about another one here? This one's pretty recent also. I even brought this up in a live stream and people were shocked when I mentioned it. Now, this particular scenario here is extermination, aka the Jewish solution. In this scenario, you unperson people. You start declaring they're less than human. They're subhumans. They're Untermenschen. These people didn't get the shot. Oh, they're evil. They didn't get the shot. They're putting you in danger. We need to shun them. And what else was occurring at this time? Talk of denying the unvaccinated the right to purchase, the right to employment. Talking about confiscating their homes and property until they get the shot. And I'm not going to say what shot. If you're that stupid and you can't figure it out, I'd tell you right now, go to the nearest wall, start banging your head till the end of this video. And what else was talked about during this time period? There was talk about taking away the children of the Untermenschen, of the unvaxxed. Taking them away, sending the parents to re-education camps, forcibly vaccinating them. I said during a live stream here, about 2 years ago, about now. Because it was after the time period lapsed when they were talking about actually implementing this. Did a live stream, everyone talking about it. And I brought up something that shocked everyone. People couldn't believe that I actually contemplated this. Before February of 2022, when there was talk from the regime in power of denying employment to people who didn't get a shot, confiscating their bank accounts, confiscating their homes, taking away their children. When that was going on, some of us were talking. And we talked about if we got to that point, if we did get to that date in February of 2022, and they went through with it, they started implementing those plans. We lost our jobs. We lost what we owned. That there was no reason at that point not to gear up, meet up, and start stacking bodies. I said in that live stream that I and others in my area that were talking about it, we discussed what to do. Things that we talked about was, well, they could only do this by doing checkpoints on cities, which was something they were talking about, putting in police checkpoints on the edge of communities and around communities to check people's vaccinations. Well, we talked about those would be lawful targets. Those checkpoints. We also talked about that as they would be going around taking away people's kids, arresting people, sending them to camps, those operations were lawful targets because we would be freeing people who were being unjustly and unlawfully detained. We also talked about actually striking at the centers set up for giving out the shots. We also discussed about intercepting the shipments of those shots and destroying them. That was only 2 years ago. We came damn close, didn't we, to everything going hot then. But at the last minute, the regime in power blinked and backed off. And while this was going on, some of you were out there screaming, why isn't the militia doing something about this? Why aren't you attacking people? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you causing chaos? Because we were getting ready to. We were just waiting for that moment. The moment that everyone across the country could see and recognize that that is the moment in history that no one could deny, no one could ignore. Let's move on to the next little scenario. I call this one invasion. It could be by a foreign power coming to our shores. And no, I'm not talking the current invasion across the southern border right now. At least not yet. Okay, there's still, you know, a lot of us think that they're still building up. They're building their forces in the country. And we're just waiting for that moment when they get the green light to go active. And when they go active, hell yeah, that's the point when you're going to gear up, kiss your wife goodbye, lock and load, and you're going to start stacking bodies. Actually, you may not even take the time to stack the bodies. You may just take enough time to strip them of that cool gear that was supplied to them by some power, some government somewhere, either foreign or domestic. And then you just move on to the next group, and the next group, and the next group, taking care of each little unit, each group as you come across them. Also, and that is the domestic threat. Just drinking some soda here to keep my throat clear. Domestic threat. 2020, Summer of Love. I and others in the militia across the country came to the decision that let those mostly peaceful protests happen where they were happening, because they were happening in socialist-held areas. They were only hurting themselves, destroying their economy, destroying their places that they live at, their homes, their apartments, causing themselves damage, not us. And what did we say, and what have I said multiple times since then? Our response was that we talked about amongst each other in the militia movement. We said that when they would leave those areas, when they would start spreading outward like a cancer, leaving those socialist-held areas, that's when we would respond. Because we're at an invasion moment. They're not just wrecking their home at that time. They're coming into American-held territory. They're coming into Patriot-held territory. At that point, damn sure you better ruck up and respond. Because you're protecting you and yours. Your loved ones, your neighbors, your family. You're protecting your place of business. You're protecting your homes, your schools. As long as it happens in enemy-held territory, I don't give a fuck. They're just hurting themselves. But when they move outward, don't you think that is a scenario that would call for the local militia, the local patriots, to go to war? If you say no, you're a fucking idiot, and move to a Democrat-held city right now, you belong there. This next scenario, persecution of patriots and ordinary Americans. And I have some examples here. Maybe you've heard of these places. Bundy Ranch, Nevada. Ruby Ridge, Idaho. Places where a overzealous government started overstepping their bounds. And there was responses from the militia movement at both of those locations. Militia went to those areas, reconned, gathered as much intel as they could, and got ready, built up their forces, built up their supplies. And they had their little tripwire that they came up with. That moment that was the moment of no return. That didn't happen. That tripwire wasn't tripped, but it came damn close. How many of you remember Bundy Ranch? All those patriots, some of them on horseback, being covered by people with rifles up on the bridge. The patriots started marching down the gully towards the Bureau of Land Management people that were holding the Bundy family's cattle inside an impromptu corral with no food and no water. The American people marching forward saying, "Fuck you." The BLM agents, not burn, loot, murder agents, were Bureau of Land Management, kept backing up and backing up and backing up till they ran away. So then the Bundys and their neighbors went forward, freed those cattle from the corral, and brought them back home. Quietly, the Bureau of Land Management left the area. Infiltrators that were in that area started passing on the intel to the federal government, and they started arresting people that were up on the bridge with their firearms that day. How many of you are aware that a lot of those people are now in federal prison because of that? They didn't take a single shot. Most of them didn't even have their weapon pointed at a particular federal agent. They just had it in the general direction. A lot of them went to jail. How about the January 6ers? Now they're getting released from jail one by one. They should be released en masse, because the courts have ruled that there is no standing for the charges against them. And yet, still to this day, the government is still charging and trying people on charges related to January 6th. Even though case after case after case is being overthrown now, you still have other cases being tried with the exact same material. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing multiple times, expecting a different result, but you still get the exact same result. What's going to happen in this situation? That's political persecution. And you know what? I'm going to throw in there a little event that happened a couple months ago. In a little place in Pennsylvania, I think it was July 13th, a shot rang out, almost took someone's head off. It was very clear to us now that the media was placed where they were in that location, taking pictures and video with high resolution cameras, a higher resolution than they normally do, covering a political event that normally they wouldn't even talk about on the news, but here they were covering it live on TV. Shot rang out. Instead of taking off someone's head, nick the ear. Has it occurred to you that maybe that little event, the way the media was positioned, the way they were taking the pictures, was so they could have it live on TV as this particular political figure, as his head exploded in high definition on your TV in live time? The regime in power showing you that they have all the power. I still have my questions on that event. But I do not deny what happened that day. An attempted assassination by the regime in power. What did everyone say later that day and the following days after that? We said we came within 2 inches of a civil war. 2 more inches to the side on that shot, the entire country would have exploded. And instead of you sitting at your keyboard right now, stuffing your face with Cheetos, or a certain individual who was insulting me last week, ramming a butt plug up his rear end, we would be out fighting right now. Not making this video, having this conversation. We came that close. That was an event. Persecution and elimination of political enemies. Those enemies, the ordinary American, especially patriots. The next event. This was also pretty recent too. How about a real pandemic? And I'm not talking a coof, coof, cough, cough, a updated version of the flu. I'm talking a real disease. Like Ebola, typhoid, the bubonic plague. One of these illnesses that have killed thousands, millions in history. Now, in those situations, you're not going to have the militia necessarily going to war. They'll deploy and they'll help out. You'll help out as best you can medically while protecting yourself doing it. You'll help feed people as best you can. You'll help take care of the kids that are orphaned. You'll help maintain order by preventing felons and other miscreants from coming in, taking advantage of the situation and looting and taking sexual prisoners. That situation damn sure calls for the deployment of the militia and patriotic Americans to help out. Something to think about, isn't it? A real pandemic. Not what we've seen, a real one. This next one has happened quite a bit. But most people outside the local areas where this stuff happens never hear about it. Raids and attacks on militia and patriots. If you ever listen to Liberty Tree Radio out of Michigan with Mark Kernke, once in a while he talks about the battles the militia up there has had with the federal government. Full-on battles that never make it in the national news. The feds come in, locked and loaded, MRAPs and all, to take down a unit or a particular individual. This individual or individuals start fighting back. And they put out a call for help. The other militia in the area start responding. And full-on firefights take place. Casualties happen on both sides. People die, people are wounded. But because it went so badly for the regime in power, they don't allow it to make it out in the press. The only talk that ever happens of it is in alternative media and militia circles, where we start doing after-action reports, reviews of the whole thing. How militia responded. What did the enemy do? What can we do better in the future? Those are local events, and those are events that do result in militia getting mobilized and going to war. And then when it's done, people go back home, clean their weapons, get washed up. The dead get buried. The wounded get treated. That happens more than you ever will realize. And it has happened more times than you'll ever know. I have one last scenario here, and this is one that should be obvious to everyone. Rise of the Antichrist. I bring this up because I am a Christian. This is an event that is in the Bible. An entire chapter is dedicated to it. It is mentioned in other chapters across the Bible also. People spend their lives researching this, trying to get every clue they can from every source available so that when it happens, they can recognize it. Now, the rise of the Antichrist is not a particular figure inside one country. It is prophesied that this person will become the world leader. He will deceive the world. And even believers in Christ will be deceived and see him as the Messiah has returned. Because in the beginning, he will bring peace. He will bring prosperity. He will bring hope. He will bring food to the hungry, homes to the homeless. He will appear in the beginning as Jesus Christ returned. But all of that is a deception. The entire world bows down to him. And he is made the world leader of every nation. All governments cease to exist except the one world government with him as its head. And it is prophesied that the rise of this Antichrist will go to Jerusalem, will go to the rebuilt temple, on the mount, where currently the Dome of the Rock is. I believe it's called the Al-Aqsa Mosque. A second temple, third temple, will be built on this location. And this individual will go there and pronounce himself the God of the world. After this occurs, that is when things get bad for everyone. But during his rise to power, Christians will be persecuted. We will be the ones blamed for the hunger. We will be the ones blamed for the crimes. We will be the ones blamed for all evils. We will be persecuted. When that happens, patriots, especially Christians, need to mobilize. Detach yourself from civilization. Disappear into the underbelly. Continuing worshiping God and surviving. Because the tribulation only lasts for 7 years. And the end of that tribulation, and we will not know when it begins. But at the end of that tribulation, the end of those 7 years, you had the Battle of Megiddo. The final battle of this earth will happen in the Middle East, north of Israel. An area so large that even today they say that every army of the world could not fill that area in this battle. The final battle forever will be fought there. And the result of that battle will see the Antichrist overthrown and cast into hell. And depending on your interpretation of the Bible, it goes one way. It's the end of time. Everyone moves on. Whether they, join the Antichrist in hell or they move on to heaven. Or it's the beginning of a golden age. 1,000 years of peace and prosperity as long as people recognize Jesus Christ as the Savior, as the ruler. And in those days, it's prophesied it will be very obvious in your face that he is. And that's the one I'm going to leave off on for scenarios. Are there others where militia could get involved? Could get mobilized? Yes. These are just the ones that I could think of over this last week. So those of you that keep talking about when are you going to get off your ass? When are you going to not be cowards? Well, I gave you some scenarios where, we could start stacking bodies, and I even gave you some information on how close we came to it. While you people are sitting back on your fat fucking ass, worshiping Hitler, praising the glory of the white race, or the black race, or La Raza, or you're sitting back rereading Das Kapital, or the Little Red Book. How close we actually came more than once just in the last 4 years. So ask yourself this, while you were pissing and moaning about when are Patriots going to do something, and we were getting ready, what were you doing? Were you still playing keyboard warrior? Microwaving that burrito, stuffing your face with Cheetos, guzzling fucking Mountain Dew like it's a fucking IV? Or were you doing the same as we were? Getting ready, making sure our weapons were cleaned, our magazines were topped off, our rucksacks were set appropriate for the season. That we knew how to get to our rally points from multiple directions in case our primary means of getting there would be blocked, and our secondary means. What were you doing, keyboard warrior? While you were sitting there typing away about when is the militia going to do something, we were doing something. We were getting ready. And we were watching for the moment. Now, for those of you who never served in the military, and when you're enlisted, if you want to get a higher rank above pay grade E4, which in the Army is specialist, you want to become a non-commissioned officer, you have to go to promotion boards. And one of the questions that gets asked at a promotion board, and it's a pretty standard question, you get asked to define war. The correct answer is war is the failure of diplomacy. It's the last resort. It's that option that you go to when there are no other options. None. Everything's been exhausted. That is the answer. And it should always be the answer. War should not be entered casually. It should only be entered after deep thought, realizing its consequences. And that collateral damage is just a word. This is the reality. Someone's mother, someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone's son, their father, their brother, bleeding out while they're left behind asking why. That's why we do not go to war lightly. Why we do not go to war at the drop of a hat. Why we tell you, those of us who have been there, keep telling you, it is not a video game where you can press reset. You can restart the level and then the ones that are dead come back to life. Death is permanent. It is forever. And they won't come back. When you fire a bullet downrange, you can't make it return and reset itself in that cartridge in your weapon. It will continue onward until it is stopped by something. That something can be the target you deliberately shot at. It could be a wall next to the person that you shot at. Or it could be an innocent bystander. Think about that. Now, for all my engineer brothers and for all patriots, for all Americans, think on what I've talked about. And always remember, essayons, let us try.